Hey everybody, it's me, Mary Z, back once again on the VoiceHacks channel. Today I have a very, very special guest, and this is Enrico Di Lorenzo from the band Hideous Divinity, who is also a doctor. A lot of you guys maybe didn't realize that a death metal vocalist and a doctor could be the same thing, but he's a doctor of the voice specifically from Italy, and it's also called a phoniatrician. And so we want to bring him on today. We're going to take a look at an endoscopy that he did of himself doing harsh vocals for a Hideous Divinity song. And he's going to break it down for us and give us some insight as to what is actually happening when he's making these sounds and when the rest of us make these sounds. We're going to talk about the different types of sounds and the different types of movements that go with that. How are you today, Enrico?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for having the chance to speak about this very nice video that we did 4 years ago. It was something that I was, longing to do for a very long time because I did a lot of researches on extreme vocals. I did a lot of researches in endoscopy on growling and screaming. But when we doctors study voices, we always do it in a very quiet and slow way. But death metal is not quiet and it's not slow.
Not
So I
slow.
wanted to do something real. So when 4 years ago we said, oh, we should do a playthrough of voice, then we decided, why don't I do a play through my nose in my larynx to show what really happens during a real song? So not just staying still in front of the microphone and saying, this is growl, and as you can see, we have false vocal folds and blah, blah, blah. I say, okay, this is real action. This is what really happened.
That is so cool. This video was from a few years ago, but the studies that you've conducted were from before that, right? You've been studying this since at least 2012.
Almost 12 years ago, I started studying extreme voices. So the first study I did, the first time that I showed it, and it's been written on the proceedings, it was 10, 11 years ago.
Wow. People have been looking at these sounds for several years already. You are one of the main people who's been looking at these. We're going to watch a little bit of it together, and then I'll pause after maybe 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and we'll kind of talk about some of the things that we're seeing here. For everybody who maybe isn't as familiar with endoscopies, the camera goes in through the nasal cavity behind the soft palate, and we're going to be looking. What we can see on the camera here is the larynx from above, essentially. So just so that the audience knows what they're looking at. So this is you inserting the camera. There we can see the vocal folds and everything now. Oh, this is so cool. Okay, I want to pause it for a second. What do you see happening in these first few frames here, vocal-wise?
Okay, when we talk about growling and screaming, so when we are not just talking about harsh vocals, but when we are speaking about something really different, that we can refer to as extreme singing, we observe a totally different physiology of phonation. Because usually we speak and we sing with two vocal folds. But as you said, we can see a lot of activities from the upper part of the larynx. So
Yes.
we have the most of the sound generated on false vocal folds, arytenoid caps. The arytenoids are two cartilages of the larynx, and they are covered in mucosa and soft tissues. Usually they do not vibrate, but in growling they vibrate a lot. The sound on false vocal folds, arytenoid caps, and aryepiglottic folds. And this something really different from the normal voice, because when we talk, we produce one sound. When we growl, we produce so many sounds.
So you're saying that we are creating distortion and seeing movement in, you mentioned three main parts. You said the vestibular folds, the aryepiglottic folds, and arytenoid cartilages. Is that right? Caps. The arytenoid caps, sorry. And this is what's giving us, in previous conversations I've had with you, you've also talked about the fact that when these things are vibrating or oscillating, that we're also creating a bunch of air turbulence in the tunnel as well. Is that correct as well?
Actually, when we speak, what I am doing right now, I'm managing a very little Bernoulli effect, a sort of a well-educated turbulence between my vocal folds, creating compression and rarefaction of air. That is
Okay.
But when we keep our vocal folds open and we push a lot of air on the upper part of the larynx, we create a lot of turbulence in all this complex part of the larynx, generating this structured and complex sound. In fact, a lot of time when we try to learn growling, a lot of teachers suggest to just do a sort of that is nothing strong, nothing hard, but it's just to be over relaxed and pushing a lot of air. That's how we activate this upper part of the larynx, this supraglottic part of the larynx.
Supraglottic sounds, the upper part of the larynx. This is great. So in this particular type of sound that you're making, the vocal folds, as we're kind of observing here, are sitting open. To me, when I do these type of sounds, it feels like this, but like the hole in the trachea is really like this. You know what I mean?
Well, it's normal. It's normal because the feeling, the perception that we have of the larynx is very different from what it actually is. Now, me and you, we are kind of used to seeing a larynx. But as you said before, seeing a larynx for the first time is something special to say, okay, what is this? First of all, a lot of people say it's an alien, it's a vagina, it's an eye.
Yes. Yeah.
You think that we have this magic box in our neck, able to produce voice, able to growl, able to scream. It looks and it feels very different from reality. So it's normal to have a perception and then to see something really different. And it's amazing, it's fascinating. It's the most beautiful part of my job.
It's so fascinating. Let's watch for a second. So I just want to pause. So right here, I know it's hard with the resolution, but I want to pause for the audience. So are these, tell us what we're seeing here. Are these the arytenoid caps here?
The arytenoid caps and the space between.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go down with the arrow, connecting the arytenoids to the epiglottis, that's the aryepiglottic folds.
So these are the aryepiglottic folds here. Whoops. Hold on. Okay, but I'm curious here. I've noticed that overall, whether you go high or low, your vocal folds seem to be open. But when you go low, this is something I can feel in myself and something I've seen in endoscopies before is it looks like the larynx is reflexively lowering. And then those the cartilage caps, the caps are tight. It seems like they get a little tighter as far as the roundness goes without closing the vocal folds because it looks like a smaller hole.
When you have vestibular folds, aryepiglottic folds, arytenoid caps, all vibrating. And let's not forget that even if vocal folds are kept open, they still vibrate. They vibrate in a very different way
Yeah.
without a real muscular activation, but they passively vibrate. Of course, there's airflow, there's vibration, but we produce so many sounds all together that the final quality of the sound is very similar to white noise. So we have
Yes.
a lot of energy, a lot of sound energy in all the spectrum. But when we talk and when we sing, we just don't use only the production of the sound. Then we have the vocal tract. The vocal tract is what change the energy between the sounds. It made a lot of timbre. It can make the sound deeper and darker, and we can move energy between the harmonics. So it's like an equalization of the sound. When we do the growling voice, as you noticed, and you are right, we lower the larynx and we open the pharynx. So we have the vocal tract that is long and open.
You said lower the larynx and open the pharynx.
Yeah, we open everything and we made it long. We can also move the chin
I
forward.
see. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is the sound of my voice with a growling attitude. And this moves the energy in the lower part. So it gets darker. So it makes sense.
You're so good.
When I want to go high, as we say, we are not really using the true vocal folds. So technically, we have no pitch. So
Yes.
how the hell I can make you feel a pitch? I can move the equalization of the sound. So the vocal tract just changes its shape. So instead of being lowered, I put my larynx up.
It goes up. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I close the spaces in my pharynx. I raise my tongue and I move my lips in what we call green face. It sounds weird, of course,
Yes.
but it moves from to but
Yes.
we start from the same supraglottic sound, and it's an incredible work that we can do with the vocal tract moving between the harmonics of the sound. It may sound complicated, but it's not that hard to understand and to feel. And every growler, every screamer knows it from its own experience. I hope that this may help. Actually, we we don't need to have a different activation of the muscles between the arytenoids. So we can press them and release them more or less. It depends on our personal and stylistic features, because we can push it more, we can push them less, but it's just something that we are adding from our own passion, taste, style. So it's what makes every singer different, and what makes every crowd different from one time to the other. We can change it. We can press it more or less. It changed some features, but the main difference between growl and scream is on the shape of the vocal tract. That's what makes the difference. A lot of people struggle to learn new techniques in order to growl or to scream. But if you have your growl, you have your scream. It's hidden somewhere, but you can find it. You don't have to learn something new. Just use what you already have.
Well, this is what I have observed a lot, is when I make certain vowel shapes, the vocal tract is changing the shape reflexively. To me, being more of a teacher and a performer, I think of it more abstractly, but I can definitely feel that goes a lot lower than, like that. So, and I have to like change the position of my tongue to achieve that, I want to watch some more. You're so good. Wow. So good. Sick. So you had some incredibly high harmonics there, actually. Everybody thinks we need to do a different type of scream to do high harmonics. As you mentioned, these are different types of white noise. We're using, essentially, when you change the shape to change the pitch, right? Because as you very aptly mentioned earlier, these are like voiceless screams. You're not...
Thank you for saying it in such a good way. Thank you.
Yeah, because I tell everybody these are voiceless, not pitchless. So voiceless meaning your vocal folds are not singing.
They are making noise.
You are making sounds, you're making pitches, and you have several harmonic overtones. Obviously, the highs, have a harmonic overtone because the shape change is really engaging physics of sound concepts like the Doppler effect and the proximity effect. It takes that same white noise and changes the harmonic of it. Man, you are so good, though. Those highs were so sick.
Yeah. And of course, before some physics freak start chasing us, it's not really white noise. It's just similar to white noise. We are not crazy guys.
Right, because we're not a fan, we're humans. But if I go in a DAW and I cut off the consonants at the beginning and the end of one of these sounds, and I just cut off the beginning and the end, it sounds an awful lot like a fan or something.
You know what? That's why I always suggest when people has to learn or has to focus on the resonation of the sound, I suggest to work with just a strong breath, something like.
You can hear that Doppler effect right there when you change the mouth around the...
You can work on your vocal tract without pushing hard on your larynx. If you have to study for a long time, sometimes it's better just to focus on something quiet, and it's perfect if you live in an apartment. Believe me.
Yes. There are some sounds that we see people make, although I know it's not probably always ideal to make these, but where we see some of these tissues like really compressed, really smashed together very tightly. I'm always calling this a sort of fry, but you said something the other day that I really wanted to ask you about it, and you said people aren't frying even if they think they are. And I really wanted to find out what you meant by that, actually.
What we refer to when we say fry scream usually is not being open and pushing a lot of air, but squeezing your tissues, as you say. So we pass from to. It is good, it works. It allows you to have a very long phonation if compared with the full power loud growl. But as you say, we squeezed our tissues one onto the others. All the larynx is not open but squeezed. So we have a very high subglottic pressure. Subglottic pressure, it means the pressure below the vocal folds, and is something strongly related to phonotrauma. That means the damage on your vocal folds done by phonation. I'm not saying that fry scream is bad for your voice, but it's something that you have to know. So, first of all, the real fry is uh, only done.
The classic vocal fry. I call that every pilot. We're at 30,000 feet.
Of course, we can dress this vocal fry like a growl. Uh, so we can modify the shape of the vocal tract to make it
Yes.
sound like a growl or like a scream. But the most of time, when people say I do fry scream, so only with two vocal folds, when I analyze them in my office as my patients, I can see that they push through vocal folds, false vocal folds, and epiglottic caps.
Yes.
I'm not saying that you cannot do it with true vocal folds. You can do it, but the most of the people don't. So they just push everything all together with a lot of heavy muscular power. That, as you can say by my face, I'm not saying that is for sure bad, but probably you're asking too much to your larynx.
Sure. It's not without it. It has inherent risks. I see when I have a lot of people in lessons doing these compressed sounds, because a lot of times they're already just doing it, they have like we have to do tons of occluded vocal exercises to constantly stretch out and prevent tension dysphonia from repeating to compressing it like that.
You can manage, you can find a safer way to do that. Of course, you can. And a lot of people do it without great problems. When I was young, I can say, we in Italy we used to refer to those techniques like fake growl, fake scream. We were stupid because there's nothing fake. There are a lot of excellent growler that did that, and they do it still now. So I'm not gonna call it fake anymore. But we have to know what it is. When we hear on a record, on a CD, on an MP3, this very super loud voice, sometimes it is very loud, sometimes it's not. So
Yes.
that's what I suggest to people that's starting to learn to growl. Know what you're doing, because with the pushing techniques, you can do it a very good sound, but it's gonna be quiet.
Yeah.
Do not try to push it loud.
Yeah.
Use it, I use it. And as a singer, if I want to do something very long, I change my technique because
Yes.
there's no shame in using everything that your larynx can do. But I'm never trying to push something that is supposed to be quiet to very loud and aggressive sound.
Sure.
I don't want
So
to have trouble with my voice.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, because I mean, you're a touring vocalist, so, you have to it has to be preserved. So yeah, so when I do this sound like that to me sounds like just the vocal folds, like it's very quiet. Yeah. Yeah. So kind of like this but in the vocal folds. But then when I do it loud now, I think that's doing what you were talking about, adding the other tissues. I'm not sure if my chords are still compressed, but it seems like they are. That'd be like the loud version, I think.
And what there's another kind of growling and screaming voice that we use just using the true vocal folds is the inhale when we do. Usually we just push the two vocal folds together, like in the real fry scream. But there's another direction of the airflow, so it's a completely different sound.
Wow. This is so fascinating. Let's go back to watching you because there's some other things I saw happening I want to ask you about.
Yes. Wow.
Oh, that's so sick. I noticed when you were changing the vocal tract shapes for the pitches, I didn't realize the epiglottis cartilage. I guess I thought it was a little harder, but it is a cartilage. It was kind of like folding a little bit.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's something really depending on your natural shape. Not everyone has the same epiglottis. Some of us has a very narrow epiglottis, some of us has a more open one. And it's part of what defines if you are a soprano, a mezzo, a contralto, or a tenor, baritone, or basso. In my case, that I have this medium narrow epiglottis, squeezing my vocal tract, closing the longitudinal space, possibly squeeze my epiglottis. It's
Mhm.
something that I found in a lot of male growlers and screamers, and
Mhm.
in I'd say 1/3 of the women that I studied. It depends on the original shape of the epiglottis. Actually, when 10 years ago I first showed these videos in the conference, everyone went crazy and we started thinking, oh, it's something so important for the scream. But actually, I didn't find it in so many people. It's a lot of men, but even if you don't squeeze your epiglottis, you're gonna scream. So, in my
Yes.
case, it's something that helped me to produce that little extra bell in the upper part of my scream when I pass from to a sort of additional resonation chamber in the larynx. But it's not something that you must have. Incredibly, it's comfortable. I would
Yes.
expect it to be something painful or at least have something bad in your larynx. No, it's not. It's absolutely comfortable.
You look very comfortable in the video. I mean, even the scope doesn't appear, maybe you're just used to it, but you don't seem affected by it.
You know why? I have a secret. I'm gonna reveal it to you. I don't use anesthesia.
What?
I don't use anesthesia because the kind of local anesthesia that we use to do endoscopy is something that takes 10, 15 minutes to start to work. And we never have that long time in our office. So usually we put anesthesia and then we start in a couple of minutes the procedure. And at the beginning of the effect of anesthesia, you're not feeling anesthesia. You are feeling some discomfort. You feel something that is touching your mucosa in your nose. So it's more the discomfort than the anesthesia. I prefer to have a high quality instrument that is it's super sliding. I don't know if it's right. So there's no friction at all.
Like lubricated, maybe.
Yeah, it's a water lubrication. If
Mhm.
it's wet, it just passes through without problem. So I stopped using the anesthesia. My patients are happy. I am happy. I can do it on myself. It's nice. I think For my colleagues, this may sound blaspheme, but I am blaspheme. So,
I mean, you're in a death metal band. It's already there. Let's watch some more of you because this is so good.
Oh, it's really cold in there. So sick. Oh my God. So good. And then you pull it out.
It's like, I can't wait to take it out now. But in that last phrase there, I really, really saw the camera angles were perfect. And I could really see on the low, the widening of the tract, and on the high, the incredible narrowing and that epiglottal like going like this. And I am so impressed by that. It's so amazing the variety of sounds that we can make as human beings. It's impressive.
So funny. So, it's such a funny thing to do. But
how many people, I'm curious, how many people have you looked at doing harsh vocals? Probably hundreds at this point.
I cannot count them. I cannot count them. I visit a lot of people. I am one. I'm probably the phoniatrician in Europe that has more ability in work on growling singer and growling patients.
Yes.
Because I am one of them, so I visit a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people.
Oh yeah, it's got to be crazy because there's very few people, and again, we've seen this before that when like regular doctors observe these types of endoscopies, like they don't even know what to do. Like it's not even on their radar. Nobody does what you do. I would say there's probably no one in the States doing this either. You might be one of the only people in the world, as far as medical doctors are concerned, regularly looking at the harsh vocals, let alone performing them yourself, you know?
Absolutely. That's probably the reason why I am, of course, I am more focused on what I love. And, well, it's not true because the most of my patients are opera singers. And I don't ask me why they love the fact that I am a growler. They love it. But, yes, I see more growler than other phoniatricians because, as I said, I am one of them. But it's not only a matter of experience. It's also a matter of respect. Because if you go to a doctor and you say, I am a growler, and he looks at you like, oh, okay, let's see what happened. What do you expect? If you growl, you're going to have problem. If he or she doesn't show you respect, how can he or she treats you?
Yeah.
You have to respect your patients. And of course, my patients probably feel safer with me than with someone else. And it's not 100% sure because when 10 years ago I first started, it was something new, it was something crazy. So it was a lot of extra enthusiasm between the phoniatricians and my colleagues. But now a lot of people is skilled in it. For a lot of doctors, it's not a surprise anymore. Growlers are come out. Yes, you're a growler. Congratulations. Now let's fix you because we can do it. So it's not a surprise anymore. And it's wonderful. I remember when I was a student, just my professor seeing rock singers say, okay, you have an hemorrhagy, but what can you expect? You're a rock singer. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
The guy behind the professor. No.
It was the same thing when I went to music college. They do not, well, at least I went so long ago that it was not allowed to to do modern. I wasn't even allowed to do belting like a like a rock singer, like none of that. Nothing outside of pure classical singing was allowed, and certainly no distorted sounds, but I did them anyway. I started doing it in college when I was also classical singing. They kind of hated me for that, but I was like, I actually did not know what was happening. This was when I was like 18 and just trying to do stuff, but I knew like logical deduction, if I'm not going hoarse and these other people in these death metal bands aren't going hoarse, my clean singing doesn't appear to be affected. So I knew that there was something okay happening. I just didn't know what it was, but you could not. I played an Arch Enemy CD for my 72-year-old classical teacher. And she was just like, I have no idea what is happening here.
Well, actually, if you are trained in both the extreme field, I mean the opera and the extreme metal, because opera is an extreme singing.
It really is.
You notice that you use your vocal tract in a very similar way.
Yes.
If not identical way. But if you apply those vocal tract shapes to your vocal folds, then you can sing above an orchestra.
Mhm.
If you apply it to supraglottic structure, you can barely produce a sound comparable to vocal folds, because we tend to forget this. But a lot of my patients that are opera singers, they say, I don't know how you can do what you do. I can't understand how you,
It is.
about growler scream, opera singers, they sing against an orchestra and they win. It's not natural. It's alien. It's we found the proof.
And there's a lot of the classical singing that changed as technology changed as well. I don't want to get too into that, but when we started to add horns to an orchestra, before horns and even before the piano forte, the actual piano, when we had little lutes and harpsichords and plucked instruments, it was very quiet. So the singing style changes as we move through the centuries, because all of a sudden you get to the 1800s and now we have brass instruments in the orchestra.
When you had to give the audience the lyrics because it was not understandable anymore, because you had to pick your vocal tracks in order to survive and to win.
So when are you going to give a master class? You have to do something like that.
Yeah, the master class in I can't remember, it was Los Angeles or San Francisco, and but I actually sang one of our songs in at San Francisco Conservatory. It was nice. We just came back to Italy after our US tour, and I already started giving masterclass immediately. I just want to mention something that we didn't have the chance to say. During the whole video, you can see a lot of mucus moving in the larynx. Mucus is nowadays, we phoniatrician are focusing our clinical activity on the health of the mucus. That is something very special that we produce in the small space between true vocal folds and false vocal folds. That mucus is a sort of lubricant, is a water-based lubricant that prevents the trauma between the two vocal folds in the vibration, and probably also regulates the temperature of the vocal folds during phonation. And as you could see, when we growl, so when we move everything so much, we produce a lot of mucus. That's not saliva, as someone would say. That's mucus produced actively in your larynx. Every one of us has experienced these things. You are in the studio, You are singing for 2, 3, 4, 5 hours, and then suddenly your voice changes in bed, and it starts to be hard like a stone against another stone, and you lost or that double effect. Probably, we are still studying that, is when your tissues has produced too much mucus for the day, so you have to rest because you don't have lubrication anymore. The phoniatrician suggestion, the doctor suggestion is when you are feeling that, take your time, rest, drink some water, and maybe start again in few hours. Respect your larynx, and your larynx is gonna respect you. Maybe.
I inhale a lot of moisture. So what I do is I have these little, they're cheap. They're like a vape. They don't last very long. It's not a vape, but it's like that. It's like a USB cool mist nebulizer, and you put saline in it. You get them on Amazon for like $30, and it just, in the studio I'll take it and like I'll even put it back by the drum riser and do it during the show. I don't care.
It helps. It helps a lot, actually. I always suggest to do it cold, as you say, but not cold, room temperature. So not hot, not hot. But there's not a 100% consensus about this. I suggested not to be hot, but room temperature, because we don't want to overstimulate your larynx. So room temperature is perfect. Is putting 100% humidity in your larynx. And there are a lot of studies conducted by Alfonso Borragan, a phoniatrician from Spain, that showed that is from outside to inside, humidification is the fastest way to have good mucus on your vocal cords and on your larynx. Another thing that I do love, and actually I prefer, is taking a gauze, not the goose, the gauze. Sorry for my pronunciation.
That's okay.
The white tissue that you use when
the gauze, yeah.
You can wet it in normal water, tap water, no problem. Then you put it under your nose and you breathe through it. So you are breathing 100% humid air, and it passes through your nose. That is the most important regulator for your voice. Everyone experienced that you can sing with throat ache, but when your nose is not okay, you're not gonna sing.
You're blocking all of your facial resonance.
Exactly. This is the most important regulator of our larynx. So breathing humidity through your nose is the best way. I suggest it 5 to 10 minutes, nothing more. It's not true that more than 10 minutes is going to work. So you can do it for 10 minutes and you're okay for 1 hour, a couple of hours. So.
Oh, I love that. That's a great tip. That's a great tip. You are so fascinating and you're so talented. Thank you so much for talking to me. And I know that everybody watching is going to want more from you. So where should they follow you and your band?
You can find Hideous Divinity and me on Facebook, on Instagram. You can find my medical stuff almost wherever. If you are in Italy, you can come to my office to say hi. But as a doctor, I always don't want people to need to see me. So I hope to meet you in a bar, in a pub. So for funny things, better a concert than the doctor office, of course. But you can find us on every social media. We are in 2022, so come on. We don't live in reality anymore.
No, we don't. Thank you so much, Enrico, for coming today and for taking your time and for sharing your knowledge with us. Everybody watching, the links to this video and links to where you can find more about Enrico and follow him and his band are below in the YouTube description. And yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun. Thank you for this opportunity. You're doing a great job. Seriously. I love what you do.
Thank you.